Hey everybody, it's Alan.
It's Helen.
We're here today because we somehow had our Zoom kind of mess up for some people last
My
night,
Zoom link.
which is not your fault because we put it out there and some people got into that link just by clicking on the link. Some other people messaged us and said, hey, what's the password? What's the code? And we're like, I don't know, because we set it to just link. And it became a big mess. So we said, okay, let's cancel it. Let's make this video here to outline what we're going to cover in last night's call.
Yes, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for taking the time to watch, because this is important stuff to not just us, but to you and to everybody else who's running through those challenges of either having a recurring thought that's causing a traumatic emotion, whether that be major sadness, anger. Some people call it rage. Some people call it depression. One of my friends from college I spoke to yesterday, he calls it anxiety. Anxiety is like the common term these days. And our whole goal today is to talk about, well, what things can we do to alleviate those feelings? So that way they can live better, so we can live better, so we can live happier. And, it was interesting. My friend said yesterday, he said, I want to learn this because I feel like my anxiety is killing my relationships. It's killing my ability to meet women. Like, he's a single guy and he's a nice guy, but he has a hard time communicating with women that he's both attracted and not attracted to, because his anxiety kicks off so much that it makes him stutter, like heavy stuttering. So the ability to understand where he's coming from, it gets messy. It gets hard for people to get what he's trying to share. So this kind of information today, in our belief, because we've had our own transformations, is really to help people overcome those negative feelings so they can break free from it.
Yeah, and not just in relationship or in career. You all know me into fitness, right? And it also lead to better strategies in fitness. When we have things in our mind, they feel like they're heavy, right? I mean, you have a goal to go to the gym. If you only have a certain amount of energy to go to the gym, but then you have to focus the negative emotions that often negative emotions drain our energy. So often ladies come to me, they they wanted to go to the gym, but there's something like really pulling them back. So that's why it got me to study more. What is holding them back? There are only certain steps to get what you want to look like, right? But what else is there holding them back? That again, that's what got me studying the mind. And Coach Ellen has been in this business for a long time, know a lot about the mind. So, and that's why we want to come here and explain to you negative emotions that are in our mind that no longer serve us, should be should be gone.
Yeah, gone, controlled, at
Yeah,
least put
yeah,
at a level
yeah,
where it's not controlling our lives.
that's right.
But
Control.
we have the ability to control it.
Yeah,
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 100%.
yeah.
So the methodology that we're going to be talking about today, in other words, the system that we're going to be using or giving some background on, I know that, or we know that there's lots of different kinds of methods, and many of them work. Probably most, if not all of them, work for certain people. What we're doing is we're sharing a way that works for us, when the traditional methods that are still good, they're fantastic for many people, of going to sessions with either a therapist or a counselor, when those don't work, and sometimes they don't, then what do we do? What's the alternative? So we found an alternative for us, so we can share that with you if using other methods and means just wasn't working out for you. Now, if you got something that works already, cool. You can either shut off this video, or you can watch this video, learn from it, and use it as an additional tool to what you're already using. Use it to complement each other. But if you find that there's something not working for you, and you really got to get rid of that anxiety, fear, doubt, hurt, that aggression, that rage, whatever it is you're going through, we're going to find that this video really could serve you well.
Yes, in addition, Coach Allen, if you already have the body you want, you have everything else in your life that you want, but somehow you're still not happy. And this is a video that you wanted to watch too.
100%. 100%. So let's dig into this. Okay.
Yes, here you go, Coach Allen.
Okay, so I'm going to start off,
you.
and I'm going to pull Helen back for her part. Okay. So to start off, we're going to talk about is where this comes from. And what are we talking about today? When it comes to making emotional change fast, really fast, what we've studied is two different systems. One is called neuro-linguistic programming, and the other one is called clinical hypnosis. Now, quick background on myself, in case you're wondering, well, why should I listen to Alan? Why should I listen to Helen? Let me tell you up front, okay? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm not somebody who operates in those modalities or those systems. I am somebody who has practiced and become a practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming and clinical hypnosis. So everything that we're going to talk about today is focused on those two things. And the reason why we focused on it was because, going back to my own story, when I was 24, my life was a mess. I was going through a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, a lot of partying, a lot of just trying to bury emotions that I didn't know was really there. And I got into a habit of just having fun all the time, but extreme fun. And it got me to a point where my life was falling apart. I was not able to hold my relationships. I was not able to hold friendships. I became very distant with my family. Holding a job was almost impossible. In 1 year, I must have gone through over 17 different jobs because I just wasn't mentally capable of being disciplined enough to just go to work like most normal people. And I realized one day that if I don't do something about this, if I keep this thing going, I'm probably going to end up dead. I'm probably going to die at a young age. And that's when I had to realize, okay, am I going to keep going down this road, or am I going to make a shift? And just like that, my brain said, hey, you better smarten up, because you're not going to last like this for very long. So I knew that in order to make that change, something had to change here. My brain was just the very first thing that came up to me and said, well, it was the first thought I had when I said to myself, I got to shift. But what's going to get me there fastest? Like, what's going to turn my life around the fastest? And that's when I realized nothing gets better until this operating system, if you want to call it that, gets better. So lo and behold, I was lucky, I'll call it luck, where a couple of years prior back, I bought a home study course, which was focused on neuro-linguistic programming. I didn't know at the time because it was not called NLP. But I literally sat in front of my computer and listened to these CDs, because 2004, the big thing was CDs back then, for 6 to 8 hours a day, crazily doing the homework, listening to the same CD over and over and over again. And there was 30 of them. So I would never put down a CD until I almost memorized it before moving to the next one. But within 30 days literally, I took that whole CD, I listened to most of it, I didn't even finish it. I think I got up to day 23. But by the time I passed my first month of just hard, heavy studying, like I was going to university, in my living room, in my, at my computer desk, it helped me, number one, clean up my complete day-to-day life. So from going to drinking and partying and just eating crap food and just having my body go to waste, I immediately cut all that out. Number one. Number two, it got me to exercise. So the first thing in the morning that I did back then is I would wake up, have my coffee, have water, and I would dart out. I would just run out the door, and I would literally start with just going around the street, and then after that, around the block, and then around several blocks. And before I knew it, I was running 3 to 5K a day. Now, you got to understand, I'm not a runner. It's not something I love to do. I don't love to run. But I knew that I had to change. And these CDs, this training on how to transform my mind, it got me to do things that I never thought I was capable of doing, like going and running every day. It got me to focus on my personal development. So every day I would listen to something, read something that would heighten my self-belief on what I was capable of doing. And before I knew it, fast forward 2 to 3 months, I had found an online business to start working in. It made enough money for me to start living on my own, which at the time I had to live at a friend's house because I didn't have enough money for anything. It got me moved from conserving my money, because I only had enough, literally, no exaggeration. I had enough, I had about $1.75 a day to live off of. And what I would do is every week, is at the bottom of the store. This is like before I had my transformation. I would go and buy a giant watermelon. I would buy a cup of noodles, and I would buy Mr. Noodles. So like the cup of noodles. Sorry, I'm calling it the wrong thing. It was like stew. So stew in a can, and you pop it over, and right, and then Mr. Noodles. And I would I would portion those three things to last me throughout the week. Because on $1.75 a day, you don't have a lot of money to live off of. I went from that to being able to fill up my fridge and comfortably buy whatever the hell I wanted to eat, all within just a few months. And the rest is obviously history. Fast forward to today, the reason why I'm sharing this today is because it's helped me break patterns and disbeliefs about myself that I didn't know was possible. The most recent story that I have to share is my dad passing away. When my dad passed away, it was January the 2nd of this year, 2023. But prior to that, it was a year and a half of watching him just deteriorate. And I got to tell you, just like you, we've all gone through some of the hardest things in our life. And that by far was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to handle, because it was the first time in my life where somebody I love, my dad, somebody who, when I was young, I looked up to, was going through this experience in his life where he was literally falling apart. He was crumbling. And I had no ability to help him. I mean, let me ask you, what hurts you more? Watching yourself go through pain, or watching someone else that you love go through pain and knowing that you have no ability to help them, or very little ability to help them? For me, it was watching him pass. It was watching him break down. It was watching him lose his basic functions of being able to talk and walk. When he got hit heavy in the last few weeks of his pancreatic cancer, those were the days where I was literally in this place of thinking, I can't focus. I can't work. I'm trying my best to keep my stuff together. I'm emotionally sensitive. I'm almost ready to blow up at anybody because I'm sad and I'm angry. I'm sad and I'm angry. And I had to make a choice, because I knew that while he was going through this stuff, one, I could not be there to help him, support him if I'm falling apart. And number two, I can't sustain my life if emotionally I'm this distraught. So thankfully, during that time, my co-partner over here for emotional enlightenment therapy, consulting, Helen, was training as well to help give me the therapy that I needed to make my emotional transition. And I'll never forget, it was in the middle of November. I told Helen that I was going through this major pain. Like I was telling her, I can't focus. I can't think of anything else. My dad is constantly on my mind. I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do, to the point where I couldn't even work. And lo and behold, she said, hey, look, we've been training in this stuff now for a little while. Why don't you allow me to use one of these techniques on you? And at the time, it was actually a technique that we were just in the process of mastering. We were just in the process of mastering it. So I thought, hey, if anybody's going to be a guinea pig, I'm as good as any. Give it a shot. Now I got to tell you, this is why we do this work today, because this is the experience I had. It was the middle of the week. I believe it was a Tuesday or Wednesday, around 3 or 4 p.m. I'm sitting here with her in this office right now, this very office where I'm showing you this video, and I'm borderline tearing, crying. She asked me certain questions that I have to explain to her to help me with the therapy, and I just burst out in tears. She stands up to try to console me a little bit, and I put my hand out and I just tell her, just give me a minute. And I can't even look at her. I'm putting my face away because I'm embarrassed of the amount of tears coming down my face. And I, sniffly, I get through and finally say the things I have to say to her to help to complete the therapy process. So once she's made all of her notes, she looks at me and she says, okay, Alan, let's begin. And I can't tell you all of it because I was so emotionally messed up. But what I can tell you is that 45 to 50 minutes after we started and we finished, by the time we completed that session, my emotions completely did a 180. She looked at me at the end and she said, Alan, how do you feel? What are you experiencing right now? And this is no exaggeration. This is, I'm not fluffing up anything. I literally went from bawling my eyes out. I'm hurt, I'm sad, I'm terrified, I'm scared, I don't know what to do, to 45 to 50 minutes later, I am looking at her saying, holy crap. I said something much heavier than that, but I said, excuse me, in case you got kids here. Holy crap. I don't know what you did, but I'm not hurting anymore. Like this emotional pain that I've had for months now of just watching my dad for the past year and a half dwindle. It's not there. And she's like, well, okay, so what if it's not there, what are you feeling? And I looked at her and I said, look, I actually feel at peace. Like I feel at peace, even though nothing outside of my life has changed. My dad is still passing away. Everything is still as it was before we did this session. Nothing on the outside has changed, but everything on the inside of me is positively different. So then we went into the deep stuff. And at that time, the deep stuff for me was talking about my dad. So she said, okay, well, talk about your dad. Tell me what you think about him, his situation. Talk about the things that used to hurt you. And for me to even talk about my father would send me into tears. It would send me shaking. It would send me into this trance where I'd be looking up in space because I didn't know what to do, where to go, what to think. I went from that to being able to tell her, hey, if my dad's got to pass away, if that's where his life is going to go, I can say that now and it's not hurting because I know I'm going to miss him physically, but for some reason, I feel like a part of him is always going to be here with me. I know it sounds crazy, right? Like that was the transformation interpretation that I created for myself. And she was able to help instill that, not at a conscious level, but it's part of what we call the unconscious mind, the part that stores all the memories, the part that stores the automatic emotions of when we feel something without choosing to feel it. And that was the moment when I realized, holy cow, my life is about to change for the better. Because for the first time in my life, I am able to control the way I feel without grudging it, without shoving it down, without pretending to put it on the shelf, think about it later. Like none of that. That pain that I had literally it was like it was just pulled out of my body. And the only thing I had left was just this feeling of gratitude and love and appreciation. And of course, missing him. Like I miss him now. It's been about half a year, a little over half a year. But I can say that to you now. I can say it publicly here on this video and still feel good about sharing it with you today. And that is why Helen and I teach this here, why we're sharing it with you, not just because you've got somebody who's passing away. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but maybe you've got pain from a broken relationship, maybe a broken marriage. Maybe you have pain that goes all the way back to your own history, something that happened between you and your mom, your dad, a relative, a brother, a sister, a best friend. Maybe something happened to you at work where it just keeps replaying over and over in your head. And you keep thinking to yourself, every time you see it, it's like, it's right there. It's happening to you again. But it might have happened to you years ago. Yet when you close your eyes, you can feel it and see it like it just happened yesterday. And it hurts. After you learn this kind of technique that we're sharing, that we're here to share in this video, we believe that you will also have the ability to choose how you show up, to choose whether something affects you in the long term or if it just affects you in the moment negatively. And if you want to turn that around, to change the way you feel about that given situation, that you have the power, the ability, the knowledge to make that shift without taking years and months to make the transition, which I know sometimes it does take that long, okay? Sometimes. But we've discovered that the majority of things that we think will take forever to make us feel better, using time to let it go, which it works. We've learned that time can be like this. Instead of years to take that change to make it happen, it can literally happen in minutes. You, just like us, just need a method on learning how to make that happen. And that's what we're going to share with you today. Now we're going to talk about what is this? Like, what do we keep referring to? The technologies that we're using today, as mentioned, one is called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. I'll just write NLP for short, and clinical hypnosis. Now, why are we talking about these two? We're talking about these two because they work side by side with each other and they both have a familiarity. The only difference is that with NLP, you are fully awake and it's a conversation where you're just creating an imagination in your mind. And someone like me or Helen, a practitioner, guides you through this imagination process. And the purpose for the imagination is that imagination bypasses the conscious brain and it goes to the subconscious brain where all memories are stored, where emotions are stored, where memory and emotions combined, events that have happened in your past, where you automatically have a feeling to them. That's where all that stuff is stored. So when change happens, automatic change, long-lasting, positive or negative changes, when those occur, it doesn't happen from here in the conscious brain. It starts here, but it gets stored here in the subconscious. The same goes with hypnosis. The only difference is that with hypnosis, you're half asleep. You're like in a very deep, relaxed state. Borderline falling asleep, but you're not. Borderline falling asleep because you're still coherent enough to talk to the practitioner, to hear everything that he or she is saying, and to choose to either stop it in the middle for whatever reason, or to change route or change course, direction in the conversation, in the process. Basically, you're still in control. You're just in a very deep, relaxed, emotional state. Again, borderline falling asleep, but still awake enough that you're coherent, that you can talk to whoever you're talking to, in this case, the practitioner. The reason why this is valuable is because most people who can stay focused on the imagination process will choose to use NLP. And most people who have a frantic mind, they're thinking about 20, 30, 40, 50 different things at once, and they can't quite focus on the one task at hand, which would be a hypnosis session or a session to do what we call emotional change work. They would usually gear themselves towards hypnosis because hypnosis allows them to channel all of their thoughts into that one thing, that one task that they're working on. That's valuable. Now, I'm going to deep dive into this in a second. Let me start off by giving you some references because, again, this video is about an hour, a little over an hour long. But the actual training, like if you ever get into the meat and potatoes of this, like the real deal, that as if you've gone to school for it and got training elsewhere for it, the total that we had to spend in just one training session was 147 hours, roughly. Other organizations that I've had a chance to train with have as much as a whole month. Some of them 300 hours, some of them 200 hours. They all vary. But as you can tell, Helen and I are trying to compact 147 hours worth of training down into just a little over an hour. So that's why I'm going to give you references. And so I don't have to explain so much here, but it'll give you something to look at and research yourself when we're done with this video call. Okay? So two names that you're going to want to look up to start off. Number one is Richard Bandler. Now I'll explain who this guy is in a second. And the second name that you're going to want to look at is Mr. John Grinder. John Grinder. Now, why are these names important? These names are important because these two individuals, along with a handful of others, are the sole individuals that are responsible for creating this system that we're focusing on today called neuro-linguistic programming. And their whole goal was to find out if there was a way to create success in the mind, building successful habits, being able to break through plateaus and challenges that most people are facing. They created the system because they noticed that throughout their life, and let's use this line that represents time. Okay, let's say this is the past and this is the future, or this is the present right now. Okay, what they noticed is that whenever there was a problem, something that was common, people didn't believe that they could achieve that X result, whatever that is. When the majority of people weren't able to achieve something, Richard Bandler and John Grinder recognized that one or two people were able to create success. Go all the way back to the 50s when we're talking about the 1 minute mile, being able to run a mile in a minute. Well, nobody believed that that was possible until one person made that happen. And when that one person made that happen, guess what? In the following years, college students, university students were breaking that record. And then 5 to 10 years later, there were high school students that were breaking that record. Well, what was the difference? The difference was belief. The difference was belief. One person believed it was possible, broke the beliefs of so many other people, and before we knew it, others followed suit. When you look at everything that you have in today's day and age, the iPhone that you have, the capabilities that it has, the Android that you have, the car that you're driving, recognize that all of the advanced technologies that we have now were once a dream. And not only were they a dream, but they were somebody's idea that the majority of others didn't think it was possible. Tesla is a great example of that. When Elon Musk decided to launch Tesla years ago, nobody believed that an electric car could outperform both in the market and on the street better than a gas engine. And that's because back then, 20 something years ago, an electric car, the first thing that people thought of was like a go-kart when you're playing golf, because that's about as fast as they can make it go. But Elon Musk did not believe that. He thought, there's got to be a better way. I'm going to find that way. And despite everybody's disbelief of me, I'm going to go make that happen. And lo and behold, now a lot of people are driving electric cars. The list goes on in terms of individuals that were able to succeed when most others failed. Now, why these two are important is because back then, and we're talking like in the 60s, back then in the 60s, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, Richard Bandler being a computer programmer, back when computers were still hush-hush, okay? And John Grinder, who was a master of linguistics, of language. Those two together had started to study the mind and recognized that when somebody was able to create success, excellence, there was a way of thinking, there was a belief system, and there was a way that they treated their body, what they call their physiology, that was universal amongst anybody who was able to break past a plateau and create a level of success that nobody else at the time was able to produce. So whether we're talking about creating cars, or we're talking about athletics, or we're talking about being smart at school, scholastics, or a talent, if somebody was succeeding in an area where most other people were failing, well, guess what? That person had a thought pattern, a system, a way of breaking down that problem, and a belief about themselves that they would bring to that event that would help them break past that plateau that everybody else thought, well, there's just no way you could do that. Well, John Grinder, being a computer programmer, and Richard Bandler being a computer programmer, and John Grinder being a linguist, they discovered that you can speak. There's a way to speak to your mind that allows you to access your brain in a way that maximizes its capacity. And what I mean by capacity is this. Oh, shook the camera there. Sorry about that. When we think about the brain, most people will assume this. If you ask somebody, well, what's the brain look like? Well, the brain kind of looks like this. It's this one big chunky piece in our head, mostly made up of fat, right? And that's what I thought for the longest time. And I just thought that it worked as one unison, one piece. So one part is like where the memories are. The other one's where, where your, what do you call that? Where your automatic living responses are, like your heart and your ability to breathe. All of that is interconnected through your heart and your brain. All of that. So we don't have to think about breathing. We just automatically do that. We don't have to think about feeling. We just automatically do that. Well, that's part of our brain. And I just thought that all of that was just in junction with each other. What we've learned from the training is that, yes, they work in unison, but they also work in parts. What I mean by parts is that there's two main parts that we talk about. Yes, there's many, but in terms of making change in the way you feel about past and present situations, let's pretend that this is the front of the brain, okay? The front of your brain right here is what we call the conscious mind. And the conscious mind, by the way, I'm a poor speller, but it's okay. You don't have to be great at spelling to know this stuff. You just got to know the stuff. So I'm just letting you know I suck at spelling. So if I mess it up, don't kill me, okay?
I can change that belief for you. I can change that belief for you.
She said she can change the belief in me. Thank you for changing that belief in me. We'll work on that later. Which is true. You actually can change that belief in me. Thank you. The conscious brain is the part that makes all the decisions. So when we decide things like yes, no, I will, I won't, I'll try this later, I'll do this now, all of that gets processed through the conscious brain. But when we're talking about pain from our past or positive feelings from our past, for example, think about a song that you really love. Is there a song that you really love, that you really like, that the moment you hear it, it just sets a vibe in your body? It just ejects you back to that part of your past where it gives you really, really good feelings. And you can almost remember and feel like you were there again, especially if it's a song that you really, really love, right? Just as I'm explaining it, you might have been thinking, oh yeah, no, I remember that one song. Oh my God, it felt so good. I remember where I was. Now, that's an example of storing that information here in your unconscious, or some people call it the subconscious mind. Now, why is this important? It's important because when people try to make changes, and I was guilty of this for years because I didn't know any better too. I used to think, okay, if I'm going to change a habit, I'm just going to change it. I'm just going to tell myself I'm going to do it. It's going to be hard. I'm going to make myself disciplined, and I'm going to go. Let's get up at 6 a.m. Let's just make this work. Yeah, that's it. No more getting up at 10 a.m. I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. every single day. Well, have you tried that? And, if you're watching this, you might have thought, yeah, I did it for a day or 2 days or a week, or I went hard for a month, or I did it for a whole year. And then what happens? Eventually, the old habit kicks back, right? Or let's take something else that's a little more dramatic. Again, let's use this line that represents time. Let's say this is where you're at right now. And let's say something happened to you way back when you were a child. And let's just say for a moment that it was something painful. It could have been a mother or a father that scolded you, and then just made you feel horrible inside. Or you wanted that favorite little piece of candy bar and your parents somebody told you, oh, we can't afford it. Or, somebody made a promise to you and later on that promise was broken. And that was way back in your childhood. Now, if you think about this now, if you have an emotional reaction to it where you feel it and you get that negative feeling, like you almost can't shake it off, well, guess what? That information is stored here in the subconscious. But yet, most of us, and again, I was guilty of that too, so I'm not pointing fingers. Helen too, that's right, we both were. We just tried to change it here in the conscious. Well, why is this a problem? This is a problem because if you're trying to make change, it's important to go and know where the change is, like where you have to go and change it. It's like going to your car and saying, hey, I'm going to change the oil in my car, but you go over to the gas tank. They're both fluids, so they should kind of be the same, right? No, you don't put oil in the gas and vice versa. If you want to change the oil, you go to the oil spot. You want to put gas in the car, you put gas in the gas location, right? Well, if you want to make a change in your habits or in the way you feel, you can't go to the conscious. It's not stored there. any experience we have will go through the conscious, but it'll get stored here in the subconscious. Now, why does it get stored there? It gets stored there because to what we've been trained and taught. The conscious brain has the ability to process an average of 128 kilobytes of information per second. And there's thousands and millions of kilobytes that come through our eyes every single day, from the people that we see walking to talking to anyone that's behind us, the billboards, cards, like you name it. There's so much going on. But our eyes are designed to pick up things that are just most important to us, to what we believe is important in the moment. But there's still so much information, right? Well, the reason why the habits are stored here is because the unconscious brain has the ability to process an average of 2 million kilobytes of information per second. Now, if you want to question me on this, if you want to challenge me, that's totally cool. We'll leave references and guides as to where you can find this information online, but it's everywhere, not hard to find. Okay, and again, I'm not coming up with this stuff. I'm not the creator. I'm a student of this work that's worked really well for me, for Helen, and for so many of our clients. So that's why we believe that it works so incredibly well and why we're sharing it with you. All right. When it comes to subconscious storing at 2 million kilobytes per second, that's one of the reasons why your mind has the ability to re-feel, to re-see, to re-hear any events in your life from your past where the emotional level during that time was really high, which is the third part I want to share here. So you learn that conscious mind is where all the decisions are made. The unconscious mind is where all the memory is stored. And how it stores memory, if it's something you don't have to work at, if it's something that just comes up from the moment you think about it, that will happen if something in your past or present happened to you and you had an emotional high. There was a high level of emotion, either positive or negative, right? Now, the next question comes, okay, Alan, I get it. So this is where if this is where all the information is stored about my past events. Well, what's this got to do with me getting triggered? I mean, remember the nature of this video call, we were talking about getting triggered, about why, or how does that happen? Where you'll have a conversation maybe with your kids. They'll say or do something that's relatively small, but you might blow up at them and get really mad at them or really sad, only to look back at that situation a few moments or a few days later and realize, well, wait a minute, why did I have to be so emotional about that? Or maybe you're on the road driving and somebody cuts you off or says something, or you feel like somebody was, putting you in a bit of danger. And instead of just swerving, getting out of the way, you might get really irate. Road rage is super common these days. Or even just talking to a friend or a coworker, where they just might look at you the wrong way or look at you in a way that you feel is negative. And instead of being able to just calmly talk to them and say, hey, is there a situation here? Is there something that we need to discuss in a calm manner? You might get into a flaring, angry state where you just want to choke that person or feel something that's like a level here, level 10, when that situation, that negative situation was maybe about a level 2 or a 3. Now, let's tie all this together, okay? That tends to happen because of this equation. But this equation cleaned up, let me clean this up for you a little bit, because I know that when I write stuff on the board, it's messy as hell. When Helen writes stuff on the board, it's a hell of a lot cleaner. Just my opinion only. I think guys do more of the chicken scratching on a board than women do.
That's a belief. I will also have to eliminate that too.
Okay, to my experience, I have noticed that women just have generally cleaner handwriting. Guys, what do you think? When you make your handwriting, well, actually, how many of you guys still write these days? I don't know.
We talk.
Everybody usually just texts, right? But to me growing up, I'd noticed, even with my dad had very clean handwriting. But that's because he was a military dad. Military dad, everything just had to be precise back then, right? So going back to this example, I'm just going to illustrate this verbally because I just remembered that I do have some people, some friends, some students that are visually impaired, so they can't see what I'm drawing on the board. So folks, allow me to illustrate this verbally as well as how I'm drawing this, okay? What I'm doing right now is I'm drawing a line from left to right that represents our life, the time of our life. On the left side, I'm writing beginning, and the right side, I'm writing current, as in current time. The way we get triggered, the way triggers are created is, before we talk about how to get rid of them, is this. Let's talk about how they're created. Let's just say, for example, something happens to us. Let's say around, I'll use something common. Let's say around 7 or 8 years old. Let's say you're playing at the park. Let's say you're playing at the park with your friend, and your friend does something nasty, mean to you, throws sand in your face, kicks you, maybe on purpose or by accident, or takes your favorite toy. Well, if that was an emotional experience for you, and the emotion was heavy enough, you might have felt something like, let's say, sad or anger. Well, you go back in the day, or even these days, most kids or adults, they're not taught how to process that negative emotion. We were just taught, even me growing up, well, just forget about it. It's over. Just let it go. You don't just handle it. Just leave it on the shelf, push it away, pretend it's not there. Do any of these sound familiar to you? Well, as a kid, that's usually what they would do. What happens is, again, if this is conscious brain, this is the unconscious brain. So conscious in the front, unconscious in the back of your head. When this situation happens, that information gets stored here. So we might consciously forget about it, but unconsciously, it's still there. Now, let's say later on, around 9 or 10 years old, something else happens. Let's say you're having dinner and you tell your dad, hey, can we have pizza tonight? And dad's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And then they bring out spaghetti. And you're like, well, what happened? He's like, don't feel like it. And all of a sudden you feel like you weren't appreciated. You feel disrespected. This is just an example, okay? But let's say something like that happens. And again, you have a feeling of either sad, angry. I mean, there's other emotions. I'm just using these two as an example. Well, guess what? You got two totally different situations here, but the unconscious remembers feeling. So if the feeling of sad or anger is remotely similar between these two, guess what? Not only do you get sad or angry about this situation, about getting spaghetti, but you also get triggered. We also get triggered, all of us do, gets the sad or angry feeling about here when you were 7 or 8 years old. Well, if this wasn't resolved either, guess what happens? As we grow up to be 11, 12, 20 years old, 30 years old, 60 years old, as long as you're alive, at any point in time when you feel another experience of either sad or anger, as in this example, this applies to hurt, to fear, to rage, to depression, to all of that other stuff. If these don't get resolved, let's say something happens here when you're 30, say you're 30 years old over here, and let's say you were supposed to work at your day job and you got cut short a couple hours for whatever reason, and then your paycheck is short, but you get no explanation why. That might make you feel sad or angry. Well, if this is a sad or anger that's even remotely similar to the previous events in your life, you now are probably experiencing a sad or anger that's this big when the situation was only about 1/10 in size. And this is why people end up going through major negative emotional reactions during situations where they're like, hey, it actually wasn't that bad when I look back on it. It's because they're not just dealing with the negative emotion that happens here. Okay? They're dealing with this emotion, plus the emotion from way back in their earlier years, plus when they were 9 to 10 years old, plus when they were 7 to 8 years old. All of this negative emotion gets pent up in the body, in the mind, and it comes out explosively over here when you have that current situation happen in your life. Now, this is huge because when I first learned this, I thought, well, isn't that crazy? Because for the longest time, I used to think that I would only get really mad if the same situation would happen or a similar situation would occur. And yes, that happens too. But our brains aren't limited just to the experience. They're also including the feeling associated to each experience. As long as these are similar, we're always going to end up blowing up. So, now that you know this, like how triggers are created, especially if you stop and ask yourself, well, how many things do I get triggered on? Well, if you're anything like me or Helen, shit, we knew we had a lot. We had a lot.
But we can handle it now.
Yeah, and now we can handle it. So now what happens? Okay, so let me change. No, you know what? I've been talking a lot. You want to come up and tell
That's
this
okay.
part?
Yeah, you
Are you sure?
Oh, I can chop in.
Yeah, chop in. So let's share this part.
Yeah.
So now what happens when we go through our problems, our challenges, whether it's at work or at home or something happens in our day-to-day life? The old version of us would be like, oh, I'm so angry. I'm so pissed off. I'm so effing this. I'm so blah, blah, blah.
Spend hours talking about the problem.
Hours and just rant and rant and rant, which really what we call that is an emotional spiral. An emotional spiral means that this negativity, when you spiral, it's like a tornado. It might be this negative, this, like, let's say this is 1 down here at the bottom, this is level 10. Let's say the negative feeling might be like a 4.
Right.
Well, you notice when people spiral, it's like a hurricane. That negativity feeling starts going into a 5, into a 6, into a 7. It gets worse and worse and worse. That's how what we used to be like. Whereas now, when we have a problem, you tell them, what's the common way that we deal with our emotional issues now?
Okay, well, I'm a mom, so I have children, and right now, especially my son, who triggered me a lot. And every time, not just
Fair,
that,
fair. I used to trigger my dad a lot too.
and he didn't know it because that's how
Kids don't know.
So,
Yeah.
but the thing is, I bring my feelings to work, and of course, Coach Ellen would say, "No worry." Like sometimes I discuss the problem. He said, "No going down there, no going down there,
No spiraling, no negative spiraling, because it just makes things worse."
Yeah. So he said, "Okay, how are you feeling now? Anger, like angry." Sad, a little bit hurt because he's my son. He shouldn't be saying those things to me. Oh, he should talk to me, right? But like Coach Allen said, no, don't worry. Okay, don't worry. We can take care of those emotions. Then that's what we do. Every time I feel negative, come into work because it drains his energy as well.
Right.
So it within like minutes gone, and I feel better.
Right.
That's how easy it is. Anything.
Now it's that easy.
Yeah.
And she's not talking about suppression.
Yeah.
Again, she's not talking about leaving it on the shelf.
Yeah.
What she's actually talking about is when we do the change work, I can ask her to relive that moment, the moment that triggered her, the moment that made her feel angry or sad. She can close her eyes, step into that memory as if she was still there again.
Right.
But then when you're there, where's that negative feeling?
Not there anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's gone. It's literally been dissipated, melted, removed from the mind and body.
Pluck the weed out of the garden or clean your floor so they don't pile up.
Yeah, there's no dirt there. There's no emotional dirt, literally.
Yeah.
And that's kind of mind-boggling for a lot of people to try to understand or even know that it's possible.
Parents, I know how that feel.
Yeah, it's
our
hard.
Our biggest gift is having kids and seeing them the way we might not want to or just can't connect with them. It drives me nuts.
It's hard to connect with the kid. You know what? Let's face it. It's hard to connect with anyone if our negative is here at a level 10 and theirs is at a level 2 or 3.
Right.
A lot of times we just blow them over and we almost become overbearing to that individual.
Right.
Where if we're trying to connect with them, but we're level 10 angry or sad or whatever that is, they're not going to understand us either. So what ends up happening is this. What we now do, I'm just going to wipe the board here real quick.
This is a really good one.
Yeah, you can definitely throw one in
if
too.
If you have a teenage kids or kids who are in the early 20s, they are so much on their own, right? In the past, I want to talk to my son, and when he's busy and he would not talk to me, he would just ignore me, and I get really frustrated. Like, why aren't you talking to me? I'm your mom. And of course, that creates, the whole thing even worse. But now, when I go up to him and I want to talk to him, he's still on his, iPhone or, on his thing. And if he ignores me, now I just look at him. Okay, I no longer get angry or frustrated. I just walk away. versus in the past, I would chase him, ask him, like, I get angry. So this is really good because it's important to share how my transformation from using techniques. And I'm proud of myself too. If I get angry, he'll get even angry, right? And then what's going to happen with our relationship get worse and worse. But now I didn't get angry at him. I walked away, and he came down and he did all the dishes because I walk away because I didn't feel like doing a dish, right? So I have my work to do, and then he did the dishes, and instead him getting angry versus in the past I get angry and he would shut the door and I would talk to me. So this is good. I'm able to hold my emotions.
Yeah, but to hold your emotions and to actually deal with your emotions in that situation.
Yeah.
See, what Helen's referring to is this. Again, I'm going to draw a line on the board. The left side represents the beginning of a situation. The right side represents the end of a situation. A lot of times when we're dealing with, let's say with our kids, and I've had this situation with my daughter too, so I can relate. If we have a situation where, let's say the problem is at a 3, but we show up emotionally negative at, let's say, a 9. Well, what'll happen is that, we might win that conversation. We're the parents. Right. We might feel like we won, but usually what that does to the child is that makes them feel their own level of sad or angry or hurt. Yeah. And then in future situations, they might not be at a level 3 next time. They might have their own pent up energy. So they might kind of jump up to a level 6 in anger or in sadness. But if we haven't dealt with ours, we might show up at a level 10. And eventually, this is why sometimes, and I say this with respect, okay, I'm not trying to be rude or disrespectful, but this video is about being real. It's about making real change. Sometimes as the kids get older, this is why you sometimes see a child will turn into a young adult and they'll yell and scream at a level 10. And then the parent is at a 10 or a 10 plus. Yeah. Now what do you get when you have this situation? You have a parent and a child that no longer want to talk. They don't want to connect. They don't want to be around each other. Yeah. They love each other. There's love there. Yeah. But it's so buried with pain, of anger, of negativity, of emotions that don't help each other. And when it gets that big, but yet the love is still in there, it's like way down here, it's very hard for them to feel that out of each other. So now what we've learned is this. We've learned that when we can remove, just going to erase the board here real quick, when we can remove those negative emotions from our past, this is what tends to happen. Let's say you've got a situation with your kid, and again, we'll stick to the kid thing because Helen brought it up. It's a great example. A lot of people go through that kind of problem.
Parents, right? Parents and kid, a relationship. What is it? Tony always say the quality of our life is the quality of our relationships, right?
And relationships
kids,
matter.
Workers, friends, relatives.
Right. Yeah. So going on about like our kids, let's say our kid is negative. Okay, let's say it's your son or your daughter, and they come up with you with a problem, or they did something that you dislike. And let's say the problem, the situation is at a -3. Now, -3 is, let's say they forgot to throw out the garbage, but they promised you. They went out and they didn't tell you where they're going, and you're a little worried, but you know they're safe. You're just a little pissed off because you don't know where your kid is. They just took off without saying goodbye, right? Whatever that situation is. If they show up at a 3 and you normally would blow up at, let's say, a 9 or a 10, well, the change work allows you to take your past, whatever made you sad or angry before. Again, let's rewrite this. Let's say something happened here when you were 8 years old. Let's say, again, a negative here happened at 10 and then at 12, all the way up to 30. So you had all these negative emotions. Let's call them, again, sad and anger, okay? Well, if we work together, or if you learn this skill set yourself, what the subconscious can do for you is it can allow you to bring your memory all the way back to where it began, which you might be thinking, well, how the hell am I going to know that? I don't even know how I started getting angry in the first place. Again, not your job to know how, not in this video. You just need to know that it's possible because the technology's been out. People have been doing this since the 80s. I've been doing this for 20 years for myself. Helen's been doing this since 2018 with my help. We've been doing this together for the past 4 years. So we know it's possible, and we've been doing this for all of our clients.
It's like the phone, right? Can you talk to people without
wire? Right, exactly. Yeah. So now what we're doing is this. Your subconscious can go all the way back, with the help of a practitioner. And if this is, let's say it's 8 years old, for example, if your anger and your hurt began at 8 years old, if an event happened there, what we do is we help you create a new meaning that turns, or the technical term for it is called a reframe. It's called an emotional reframe. I'll just put ER for short. And the emotional reframe basically allows you to look at that situation and see it from the other side of a coin. When you look at a coin on one side, you might see heads. But if I'm standing on this side, I'll see tails. Now, who's wrong? Nobody. Because there's a heads and there's a tails. Well, guess what? To each situation, there's also a heads and a tails. And what we've learned is if you can see it, if you're on the head side and you can see it from the tail side, this is a simple explanation. We'll go deeper in a future video. Mm-hmm. What'll happen is that'll change the way you feel. It may go from a negative, let's say it's really painful, a -10. Well, that might drop all the way down to a -2. If you got to deal with an emotion and it's a painful one, and it's this big, or you get to choose this big. It's a big one or a small one. Which one would you rather choose if you're trying to solve it? Well, you probably pick the 2. It's just easier to handle. Well, subconsciously, you can do that with the help of a practitioner, again, or learning the skill set yourself. If you get it from the beginning, then what happens is this. It's like a chain. It breaks. And once you break that chain, the negativity, the level of negative energy that gets associated, all of a sudden drops this to a 2, drops this to a 2, drops this to a 2, so on and so forth, all the way to the present. So when you have this situation where you normally blow up as a 9 or a 10, negative, sad, or anger, well, if you've knocked out all of these from your past so they don't feel so heavy anymore, you'll probably show up at a level 2 or 3 as well. Which means that if you're dealing with somebody and they're at a 3, if you can match them at a 3, well, guess what? Do you think there's a chance you might be able to connect with them better, talk to them better, not be overbearing with them, which would not trigger them usually. Sometimes it does, but usually it does not trigger them to be overbearing with you as well. It gives you a chance to be able to be more calm during tough situations, during tough times, which then allows you to be able to keep the relationship both with the person you're talking to, in this case, your kid, and with yourself. Because when you walk away from that situation, guess what? You're either going to feel good about how you handled it, or you're going to feel crappy. As parents, we've got a long list for many of us of feeling crappy on how we dealt with our kids.
Because we all want to be good parents.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we all had that our own crap from the past that just got brought up.
Yeah.
Well, once you sever that, once you cut that tie, if you have a negative experience, you can bring a negative energy, which is normal. That's the way it is. But you can have it where it matches the person, it matches the situation, instead of bringing like the cannon to what did Jim Rohn say? He said, if you're trying to chase a rabbit, if you're trying to catch a rabbit, don't bring a missile launcher. Because once you fire the missile launcher, there's no more rabbit. All right, that was his metaphor.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So when you have this situation, you don't have to bring your missile launcher. You can just come and talk to your kid and actually have a mature conversation with them where it actually feels good. Where if you get a little angry, they get a little angry, but you can control yourself. Oftentimes, you may influence them to learn how to control their behavior too. And then you've got to maintain the relationship during some of the hard conversations. And I can attest to this personally because I've had these kind of experiences with my daughter. I didn't have them when we first were getting mad and yelling at each other, but I had to learn. I had to learn that if this continues, I won't have a relationship with her anymore. She won't want to come and talk to me. And I didn't like that. It's one of the other reasons why we had to learn the skill set so we can maintain that connection that we have with each other, especially when it's hard.
Yeah, and that's right, because I learned that I had injected my kids, my son with some of my negative emotions, my negative energy.
Just from your past, which is something we've all done by accident.
I did not mean it. My mom or dad probably didn't mean it the way they raised us. Raised me. But the good news is I'm actually giving this gift to make it better. That's why I wanted to share with you. If you're going through this, wanted to have better relationships, work, your body, anything you want, you can actually can achieve it.
Right.
That's one. So so lucky.
Right.
I'm very lucky.
Right. Yeah. And
To
we
make
are
it
lucky.
better, make it better.
We are lucky
Yeah,
because
yeah.
now we have more control over ourselves,
Right,
which now allows us to teach that to people that
Right.
we love,
right,
which now allows us to share it with you if you are going through that problem of feeling so heavily triggered,
right.
or if you're going through this constant state of depression or sadness or rage or anger, and you're just sick and tired of it. Like I got sick and tired of being in this place where anything on the outside that I didn't like
Yeah,
would trigger me.
yeah,
And I hated this feeling of knowing that just about any outside situation could control the way I feel. I didn't like that. I woke up one day and I said, look, there's got to be a better way to live.
right.
Like just because somebody cut me off, it doesn't mean I should be flaring up and blowing up and wanting to, imagine pressing this button and missiles are going at the guy's car. Like maybe he's rushing to the hospital because his wife's about to have a baby. Like I don't know. Like why am I flipping out so much? Or when I was younger, I'd be at a restaurant and if the waiter just looked at me like with no smile, when I was 20, okay, I instantly thought, man, this guy hates me. Well, maybe
Because it was hate inside of you.
Maybe somebody yelled. Yeah, exactly. Maybe somebody yelled at that guy.
Yeah.
Why am I reflecting my own negative energy on that person?
Right. Because
Right?
you had in you that you were
Correct.
not able to remove when
You're
you
right.
were young.
Yeah.
So like a language, and this is very simple. If you can speak another person's language, you instantly can connect. So it doesn't matter good or bad. If you have hate inside, sadness inside, you can actually relate to other people, right? So now you can actually remove the things inside you you no longer want, so you can connect to things that you want, connect with the people you want.
Right. Right. Which leads us to our last portion, and it's really important, okay? So we've dumped a lot on you for today, and we're going to close off with this. Number one, some references that you can utilize. Okay. Number one, I'm going to ask you if you want to look deeper into this for yourself. Okay. So if you are the kind of person that says, hey, I like to do it myself, just give me the materials, Alan and Helen, I'll go research this myself. Here's the stuff you want to learn. Okay. Just go ahead when you have time, go on Google or go on whatever search engine that you use. We tend to use Google. And I'm going to ask you to type in Richard Bandler, any of his books, any of his videos, watch them. YouTube, a whole list of them. Go to Amazon. He's got some really small, low-cost books that are like 20, 30 bucks. And it's a great introduction into the NLP world to help you understand how the unconscious or the subconscious brain works. Don't just take it from us, take it from the people that we've learned from. So you can get a little insight on how to get your unconscious to work in your favor as well. Also, outside of Richard Bandler, look at John Grinder's work. John Grinder also has a whole list of videos, audios, books out there that talks about the subconscious mind, on how to learn how to reprogram your own subconscious mind or take control of it. Just so that way emotions don't take control of you, but you have a better ability to control your own emotions, especially during critical times where you don't think that you can, right? Somebody cuts you off, you get into a fight with your spouse, your kid does something that you disagree with, etc., whatever the case is. This is a great introduction into looking into their work where you no longer have to be controlled by the outside situations, but no matter what happens on the outside, you can control the way you feel about those events, even if it's something that's super drastic and super painful from your past. And look, I say this respectfully. We've helped clients that have had to deal with everything from potentially thinking about suicide to having their children abused when they were really young. And I'm talking about like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, to individuals that had to get over being raped. Like some really heavy stuff that A, I never thought we'd have to deal with, but B, we actually had the ability to help them overcome. So much to the point where they could close their eyes, they could relive that moment, as dark and as terrifying and disgusting as it was, and they no longer have to feel that pain inside. They can literally stand there and say, oh my God, there it is, but it's so far away from me now. Or the image is blurry, or it's black and white, or I can see it, but it looks different and I don't feel hurt by it anymore. Like they can control the way they feel because we help them alter the way the imagery or the emotional attachment was to that part of their past. They're not controlled by that anymore. And that's the power of what this technology has in store for people who want to learn it.
Yeah, even for some of the cases, Coach Allen said too, some of the cases we get from our client is so dramatic, so sad that we actually feel it, and then we have to learn how to get rid of those negative emotions.
Yeah.
Some of the things that happen to our clients is unspeakable. It's
yeah,
so unspeakable.
It brings tears to our eyes.
Yes.
And without this information, without this knowledge, we would be stuck with those negative feelings too.
We wouldn't be able to work with them because it would drain our energy, right? When we make up energy, we have energy drained by someone else. How are we going to, work with, in our own life?
Right, right. But now we don't have to worry about that. When we're done with the client, we actually go through an emotional wash ourselves where we can separate those emotions. And so we can wake up the next morning and not feel traumatized about what we had to mentally relive and experience with our clients to help them get through their stuff too. Right. So it's really practical for lots of everyday situations. The third person that I want to ask you to check out is Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins, also known as Anthony Robbins. He's got all sorts of stuff online. But one of the things I want to ask you to look into that really digs into subconscious mind is a book that he's got called Awaken. Remember, I'm a poor speller.
I'll change up belief.
Awaken. Thank you, Ms. Fong. The Giant Within. It's an old book. He wrote this way back in the 80s or 90s, early 90s, somewhere there. But Awaken the Giant Within on Tony Robbins, let me give you a quick breakdown or a synopsis of the book. The book basically talks about being able to tap into the unconscious mind. And just like how I explained to you here, how the conscious has 128 bits of information that it can process, but the unconscious does 2 million. He talks about the advantages of being able to live your life in a way where you always tap into your unconscious and you use this as the main operating system versus what most people do when they're in a tough spot, in a tough situation. They use the small computer, the conscious mind, the 128-bit part. He talks about not only how it's an advantage to use the unconscious, the 2 million, but on how you can tap into that and the kind of world that you now live in when all of a sudden things that you thought were impossible for you to do, to change, to have, to experience, all of a sudden they're not an impossibility anymore. When beliefs that make us think, oh man, that goal is so far away because we're using conscious, he talks about how you can use the unconscious so it's literally right there where it looks and feels like it's within that arm's reach. And it's not just like a woo-woo idea, because this, again, don't forget, all of this is derived by super hyper successful people. Not just success in money, but success in sports, in relationships, in building friendships, in learning self-belief, self-control, self-mastery, like everything across the board, from Olympians to amazing mom and dads and everything in between. They were studied. And they were studied to find out how do they use this thing we call a brain so much different than everybody else. Because let's face it, when you've got a room full of top-level athletes, of top-level CEOs, there's always going to be one or two people that are the best of the best. Well, John Grinder, Tony Robbins, Richard Bandler, they all studied those people and continue to. And they keep finding that their model of how to chase after that kind of thing that we call success is very different from the rest of the world. It's why those people succeed at that level, not because they're just gifted or talented. Yes, of course, that's part of it. But if you look at their histories, if you look at their backgrounds, you find out that a lot of these people that we look up to, they were no better than us. A lot of times they had less advantage than we did, but they still found a way to succeed anyway.
Yeah, that's 100 years ago. Look at them. Back then, 100 years ago, they didn't have the technology that we have today, right?
Right.
They still got where they want to be.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's why you have a better advantage now, because you have technology, you've got the social media, you've got the internet that gives you access to all the information that you need. Like the list goes on, right? So this is for you if you're that kind of person that wants to go and learn it yourself. Okay, check out that book, look into their work. All of their materials are online. Doesn't matter which one you pick because they're all derived into the same thing, which is how to transform. How do you utilize subconscious? And we promised you that this video is going to be free. This training's free. And up to this point, it is 100% free. You've got enough to go out there and look for it. Go find it. Go make that change for yourself. Switching over, before we close off, we know that there's some of you that are like, hey, I would love to study this stuff, but I just need to change now. I need the difference now. I've got problems in my life. I've got things in my life where I can't wait months and years to learn it, practice it, study it, and then go do it. I need somebody to do this to me today. If you are that kind of person, I'm going to ask that you, on wherever your platform you're seeing this, message me and just type in help. That's it. Just type the word help. And I'll do what we will do is we'll shoot you out a link on some options that you can use that we can utilize to help you get over that problem, that challenge. Instead of waiting months and years, we'll help you do it in minutes, literally. And just to prove that, we're going to close off this video with a couple of testimonials from people who we've helped in our recent past who have been stuck with their problems for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And literally within a few short hours, had their minds completely transformed to when they try to go back to that time of their life, they can if they can really push it. But it's so hard for them to get there that now they're like, I don't even remember what that problem was.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It
or
is crazy.
they think
It's
that
magical.
problem, they try to think about that problem and they're like, oh yeah, it's there, but it's, I don't know, it doesn't feel the same anymore.
They feel lighter. And the skin glow. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Oh, she's talking about the skin glowing because stress and anxiety causes heaviness in the body, including the face.
Yeah, after session, you can see the ladies.
One of the biggest challenges or changes that people have is, especially with the ladies, we've been working so much with the ladies, is that their face gets lighter because they're able to relax the muscles on their face. And believe it or not, having tension causes wrinkles. Having no tension or little allows the face to relax, which just allows a glow and a lot of wrinkles to naturally go away.
It's because according to what I studied, negative emotions closes the cells up. So what happens? The cells in your body get closed up, so no blood goes into your face. That's why they after the session they have glow in the face.
Yeah, she's talking from a lady's perspective. That's why I'm nodding. I'm like, yeah. Glow in the face. For all you females out there, it is definitely a commonality experience that our ladies experience. And that's something that Helen's excited for you to experience as well. So again, any questions or comments, go ahead and message us in the comment section down below. If you found this video to be helpful, please give us a like. We want to circulate this as much as we can. And if you want to go out and do it yourself, here's the list. This is where you start. And if you get through all that, once you do, message us for more. We'll give you more materials that you can go out there to find for yourself. And lastly, if you are somebody that's like, hey, I just need help now. Helen, Alan, will you help me? Just comment either publicly in the comment section or DM us and just say help. That's all you got to do. And we'll shoot you a link on how we can help provide service to you ASAP to help your life get better as well.
Yeah, or you have people that you love who might need this kind of help, you can pass this video to them as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
We're just here to help in however way we can. Okay.
Thank you so much, Coach Alan.
But however it is that we've helped you, thank you for being here.
Yes.
Thank you, Miss Helen, for taking part in this. Major contributor to my change and to many other people out there as well. And one more time, we just want to say thanks for your time because we mean it. Like we really wanted to take this time. We could be doing anything else, but we spent an hour and a half here to help give service to you, to help you, hopefully be a good guide for you. And again, we want to thank you as well because you could have been doing anything else, but you chose to spend some time with us here today.
Because I know you want to become better for yourself and for others.
100%. Again, thanks for being here. We'll chat soon.
My mom passed away in late March, and I approached Alan around end of February, and he introduced me to Helen, and both of them helped me a lot through accepting the inevitable with her condition, and even afterwards with accepting her death. Before I went to them, I was the primary caregiver for my mother, and I carried a lot of burden on my own, and I thought I could do it on my own, but I think reaching out was the right thing to do, because they've helped me, equipped me with tools, how to manage trauma and how to be a better person and get out of my own way, um, and address the inner child that I needed to address. Um, what they do is really invaluable. I can't even put a price on the amount of help they've given me. And I really did feel the warmth and the genuine care that they gave me. It wasn't about clocking in hours or receiving a paycheck. They really do want to see you do better. And because of them, I was able to recover so much more quickly than the average person. My mother was very close to me, and without their help, I might still be stuck, processing that trauma and that grief. So I'm just so thankful to the both of them. And they've also been helping me with fears such as driving and swimming, which I haven't been able to do for a decade or so. I can actually submerge myself underwater and do some front strokes now, and I can get behind the wheel and drive around the block and even park a car. So that is saying a lot. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, Ellen and Helen.
Hello, I just wanted to share a short story about an experience that I made with Helen and Ellen during the last 4 months. They helped me so much in my life because in May I was staying in contact with them, and I told Helen that I like to quit working at school and go back on stage as a comedian again, because that's really what I love with all my heart, being a comedian and make people laugh. And I said to Helen, when I go out of school, I like to be in a shape, in this good shape that I was when I started working at school 7 years before. So she gave me a 9-week schedule, and I worked it with her, and every week I talked twice with her for half an hour. And now I have 7 kilos less, and I feel really good right now in my body. I have power again. I look in the mirror, and I like myself so much more. But this was not all, because then when I was finished with this 9 weeks, she asked me, why don't you send your clown videos, your comic videos, not to stages where you really would like to work? So I said, that's scary, but I know. I was reading her book, and she said that she was also having a competition as a bodybuilder, and she did the 2nd place. And I said, well, when she can do it, I just do it too. So I sent it my video, and 2 days later I got a note that I can be in the newcomer show from this really fancy, famous Quatsch Comedy Club in Berlin. So last Sunday I did my performance, and I won the 2nd place. So now I can go into the next round. And the support from Helen and Ellen helped me so much, because Ellen then started doing with me NLP sessions, because I was so scared and I was having so many doubts in my head that I'm not prepared enough, that I'm not fitting there. And I recognized with working with him and her, she did hypnosis also with me, that there were all old thoughts that did not have anything to do with the situation right now. So doing the work with both of them and going through this all with help from them, it really made me strong and good, and I'm so happy. And I hope they will be on my side for the next weeks, months, because in November 26th I have my 2nd chance to go on stage with newcomers, and then I will see what happens. But even I'm at the point now, even if I don't win, the journey already was so much fun and so much help for my life. It was really fun to be with them. Okay, so bye.
Hi everyone, it's Vicki Freed here, and I was asked by Helen and Alan to jump in for a second and let you know about my session with Alan and Helen. So I've had a issue, which I believe most of us have had for most of our lives. Many of us have affirmation cards saying, I am good enough. And we tell ourselves a lot of things that we want to counteract from something that maybe came from our childhood or came from significant people in our lives. So I had a special issue that was holding me back, and Alan and Helen could get to the root of it in one session. And what happened in one session was that they took something that I would tell myself every day, or every negative occurrence that happened, I would tell myself. And after that session, I never thought of that again. And when I would tell other people about needing to maybe do a session with Alan and Helen, they would say, well, how did they help you? And for me, I would have to stop and think, gosh, what was it that I was saying to myself? Because I honestly never ever have said it again in my head to myself since my session. It literally has been erased from my mind, except for when somebody brings it up and asks me about it, and I can tell them that through my childhood and my in one of my marriages, that I was told and reminded constantly that I was not good enough. When I went to do something very big, or to even get accepted into a college, I was told I wasn't good enough for almost anything, and I actually was. And I actually did a lot of things that people told me that I could not do because I wasn't good enough. But when things would get really, really hard, that I'm not good enough would overwhelm everything else, and I would cry. I remember during an abusive time in my marriage that I just wanted to die and thought I would commit suicide, and that as a Christian, I translated I am not good enough into God doesn't love me enough to help me out of the situation or do something good for me. So, but he is, because he brought me Alan and Helen, and I have not had that thought. I have not had those feelings. I have not had those tears. I have not had anything that when negative things happen, I never have that thought. It just doesn't even pop in my head. And so they were able to take me to a place back in my childhood where that first occurred and help me through that. And the funny part of it is when we were done with the session, Alan took a picture of me on Zoom, and he said, you look younger, because you just look like you've released so much that it actually has made you look younger. I don't know if I do now, but at the end of that session, I did. So if you are wondering if something like one session can really remove 50 years of something you've been telling yourself that was so negative and so harmful to you, yes, it can. And you don't have to say, well, it's not spiritual, it's not the right thing, or whatever. You need to decide for yourself if the last 50 years worked for you in whatever you were doing. And for me, it didn't, and no affirmation card or nothing I wrote on my mirror was going to change that. But it literally changed within a couple hours with Coach Alan and Coach Helen coaching me on how to remove that toxic thought that was overwhelming in my life, and so overwhelming that it was causing me to not be able to do things. So just wanted to hop on here and let you know that take a chance, listen, and go through a session, and you will find that you will have an amazing journey, and that you will find yourself in a better place at the end of that session. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope that you all have a healthy day, and that you understand that Helen and Alan are a blessing. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Here is, first of all, I want to say thank you, Alan, for helping me getting through my really frustrating and angers that I've been holding towards my daughter for the longest time. And honestly, it's something else, but it related to her in some way, somehow. Long story short is, every time I see her, I would get so angry, get so fired up easily in anything she say or do. And I remember before I see her, I would have this perfect image, hugging her, kissing her, and just really happy moments. But when the time comes to actually sit in the same room with her, I was not able to do it. I was not able to hold my angers, my frustrating toward her. I just couldn't. So one day I told Alan and asked for help, and he was able to help me getting through that feelings that I feel for the longest time that I didn't even notice it, and I didn't understand why and how it happens. Anywho, he was able to help me get through that by giving me the tools, and was able to remove that feelings towards my daughter, or whatever it is in the past that I held on for so long, and it just happened to, I took it out on her. And when Alan's was able to spend, I believe, maybe half an hour to an hour, give or take, and he was able to help me get through that and just letting it go. So as the time go by till today, I have nothing but good memory of my daughter. Like when we in the same room, we would have laugh, we were able to have a conversations, we are able to hug her, and I definitely was able to say I love her a lot of time. And just there was no longer that frustrating or that anger feeling toward her. And I honestly say thank you so much for able to remove that for me, and able to give me the tool to help me to get the bond and the great relationship with my daughter again. And yeah, hopefully anyway. So again, thank you, Alan, for your help, and thank you for saving my relationship with my daughters. I really truly appreciate it.